Freedom of speech and journalism tend to go hand in hand, but it's not a union that everyone supports. In America, for example, the government's found its own methods of punishing reporters whose overseas operations don't meet with the wishes of Washington. RT's Gayane Chichakyan explains.
In the U.S., free speech is protected by law. So what can the government do when they don't like what some journalists reveal about them? It turns out a smear campaign is one of the options. Chris Woods is co-founder of the London-based Bureau of Investigative Journalism. The organization took great efforts to report on the deaths of many civilians in CIA drone strikes overseas.
The CIA and other elements of the US intelligence community chose to attack our work rather than to investigate some of the points that we were raising for them, particularly around the deaths of civilians.
In several articles, including this one in the New York Times, an anonymous U.S. government official tacitly accused the journalists of being sympathetic to al-Qaeda.
Let's be under no illusions. There are a number of elements who would like nothing more than to malign these efforts and help al-Qaeda succeed.
To suggest that in any way I or my news organisation, the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, are in any way sympathetic towards al-Qaeda or its goals is disgraceful. I do think those kind of smears indicate the stakes involved here, though. The CIA, remember, is claiming that it killed no civilians in Pakistan at all for more than a year. And our reporting and the reporting of many other credible newspapers and academics now shows that that simply isn't the case, that that's simply untrue.
USA Today journalists Tom Vandenberg and Ray Locker became the subject of a sustained internet campaign to discredit their work, just days after they began publishing the results of their investigation into a multi-million-dollar Pentagon-funded propaganda mission in Iraq and Afghanistan. Fake websites, Twitter feeds, and Facebook accounts were set up under the journalists' names, in which they were accused of being backed by the Taliban. We tried to contact Mr. Locker, but he wrote back saying his editors prefer that he does not do any interviews on the subject. But a smear campaign wasn't the punishment for the prominent Yemeni journalist, Abdullah Haider Shaye. He was the first to report on the U.S. drone strike in Yemen, which killed 14 women and 21 children back in 2009. He's now in jail in Yemen, upon the request of Barack Obama himself, convicted of having ties with terrorists.
And what's most outrageous for me as an American journalist is the role of the U.S. Ali Abdullah Saleh, the president of Yemen, gets a phone call not from John Brennan or one of Obama's advisors, but from President Obama himself. And President Obama said, we're very concerned about the release of this guy. We don't know the full extent of what happened in that phone call, but the White House and State Department, in fact, I interviewed the State Department, admit that Obama, in fact, said the U.S. wants him to stay in jail.
Here in the U.S., or in the U.K. for that matter, journalists are protected by law, and it's not easy to put them in jail. But there is one way to get back at them. Try and discredit their work by suggesting they're helping terrorists or the Taliban or whoever else. One might argue that the label terrorist helper is becoming an all too convenient tool for the government to brush off investigative journalism, which exposes their flaws. I'm Gayane Chichakyan reporting from Washington, RT.